following program is brought to you in living color on NBC.
This is the story of the Wrath of Khan. You can read along with me in your book. You will know it is time to turn the page when you hear the communicator beep like this. Let's begin now. Space, the final frontier. These are the continuing voyages of the Starship Enterprise. A new crew was being trained on the Enterprise. The ship's new captain, Mr. Spock, asked Admiral James Kirk to observe the crew's first training flight. He greeted his old friend when he came aboard.
How are you feeling, Admiral?
Useless, Spock. I feel old and useless. I shouldn't be working behind a desk on Earth. I should be out here in space.
Meanwhile, light years away, Commander Chekhov searched for a test site for an important scientific experiment codenamed Genesis. He and Captain Terrell of the Starship Reliant beamed down to investigate a lifeless desert planet. Chekhov saw something through the wind-blown sand.
A ruined spaceship! What is it doing here?
The two men entered the wreck through its airlock. Instantly, a muscular white-haired man seized Chekhov, lifting him into the air with one hand. Chekhov's eyes bulged.
It's Khan! Captain Terrell! He's a criminal! He once tried to steal the Enterprise!
Khan smiled chillingly.
Yes. And as punishment, Captain James T. Kirk marooned me and my people here 15 years ago. I've stayed alive all this time for one reason. I mean to avenge myself upon him.
Khan lowered Chekhov.
Why have you come to this planet?
I'll never tell you.
You'll tell me anything I want to know.
Khan carefully removed two tiny, wiggling creatures from a sealed container.
These are Seti eels. When I put them in your ear, they will allow me to control your mind.
Chekhov and Terrell shivered as Khan approached them with the squirming eels. Once Khan had control over their minds, he forced Terrell to give him command of the Reliant. Then he made Chekhov radio Dr. Carol Marcus, the scientist in charge of the Genesis project.
The planet has checked out, and we have new orders. We're coming to pick up the Genesis device for immediate testing.
That can't be, Commander. Who gave the orders?
Khan made Chekhov answer.
Admiral James T. Kirk.
Admiral Kirk inspected the Enterprise before she took off on her training flight. He smiled at the chief engineer.
Is everything shipshape, Mr. Scott?
Scotty patted the powerful engines lovingly.
Aye, Admiral. She'll take anything you can throw at her, even trainees.
Suddenly, the intercom blared.
Urgent message for Admiral Kirk.
Kirk dashed to his quarters and flicked on the view screen. It was Dr. Marcus. The message faded in and out, as if it were being jammed.
Jim, did you order the Reliant to take Genesis away from us?
Then the picture went dead. Kirk called Sulu on the bridge.
There's something wrong at the Genesis lab. Plot a course for Regular 1.
As the starship leaped into warp drive, Kirk went to Captain Spock's quarters.
Spock, there's trouble. Regulations require me to take command of the ship. I'm sorry, I know she's yours now, but...
Spock raised an eyebrow.
Don't apologize, old friend. Logically, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Besides, I have no feelings to hurt.
As they neared Regular 1, Spock reported.
The Reliant is closing on us, Admiral. She won't respond to our communications.
Suddenly, the Reliant's phasers blasted into the Enterprise's engine room. Kirk shouted into the intercom.
Scotty! Damage report!
Admiral, the main power is out. The warp engines are wrecked. Whoever's on that ship knew just where to hit us.
A face appeared on the bridge view screen. Kirk couldn't believe his eyes. It was Khan.
Ah, Admiral. I see you still recognize me after all these years.
What do you want, Khan?
I want your life, Kirk. However, I'll spare your crew if your computer transmits all your data on the Genesis project.
Agreed.
Kirk turned away from the screen with a secret smile. Spock whispered to Kirk.
Admiral, you can't give him Genesis.
I won't, Spock. I'll use our computer to lower his shield so we can fire back.
Rapidly, Kirk programmed the computer, then turned to face Khan.
Get ready to receive our transmission.
The computer sent out its signal, and Reliant shields dropped.
Fire phasers, Mr. Sulu.
The blast exploded into Reliant. Heavily damaged, Khan's ship had to retreat into space, while the wounded Enterprise leapt onwards towards the Genesis lab orbiting Regula 1. Commander Uhura tried to contact the lab, but the only response was an eerie silence. Kirk made a decision.
Khan's been there. I'm beaming down. Dr. McCoy, come with me. People may be hurt. Mr. Spock, the ship is yours.
Once aboard the empty station, the landing party found Tyrell and Chekhov.
Admiral, Khan controlled our minds, used us to trick you, but he didn't get the Genesis device. It was gone when he arrived.
Kirk examined the lab's transporter.
The controls are set for regular. I think Dr. Marcus took the Genesis device down there.
Stepping into the transporter, they beamed down to the tiny planet. The group materialized in a cave deep inside Regula. There they found the scientists from the space lab and the Genesis device. Instantly, Tyrell and Chekhov drew their phasers. Khan's voice crackled from their communicators.
You lose, Admiral. These men are still my puppets. I'm taking Genesis, but first I'm going to have Mr. Chekhov kill you.
But Chekhov desperately fought Khan's control. He threw down his phaser and fell unconscious. Dr. McCoy examined him and found the SETI eel in his ear. With a shudder, he destroyed it. Khan's transporters snatched the Genesis device. Kirk grabbed his communicator.
Khan, you missed again. I'm still alive.
Khan growled back.
Buried alive, Admiral. I'm going to destroy your ship. No one will ever find you.
McCoy threw up his hands.
Would someone please explain to me what the Genesis device is?
Dr. Marcus led them all into a tremendous cavern full of trees and flowers.
Genesis created this in a day. It turns dead rock into life forms. It could do the same to a planet, but everything already living on the planet would die. It would make a horrifying weapon.
Kirk's communicator chirped.
Spock here, Admiral. The Reliant is approaching. We're going to beam you up.
Moments later, Kirk was on board.
Spock, what's our situation?
We have partial power, but Khan can still outrun us and outshoot us.
I see one chance. If we fly into the Mutara Nebula, Khan's shields and sensors won't work.
With the Reliant chasing close behind, the Enterprise headed into the nebula. The vast clouds of gas and dust blinded the two captains as they hunted each other. Suddenly, Kirk's view screen cleared.
Reliant's coming straight at us. Evasive starboard.
The ships exchanged tremendous phaser blasts. The Enterprise was hit.
Fire photon torpedoes.
The torpedo shot away and blasted into the Reliant, nearly ripping her apart. The Reliant hung dead in space, a battered hulk. Kirk had Uhura open a communications channel.
Khan, surrender and prepare to be boarded.
Khan, badly injured, crawled to the Genesis device.
No, Kirk. The game's not over. To the last, I will grapple with thee.
With his last strength, he armed the deadly machine. Spock checked his instruments.
There's an unusual energy source on the Reliant. Admiral Kirk, he's armed the Genesis device.
Kirk called the engine room.
Scotty, I need warp speed in 3 minutes or we're all dead.
Impossible, Admiral. The Energizer's shaken loose. There's a radiation leak and I can't get in to fix it.
As the Enterprise limped slowly away from the Reliant, Spock leaped up and raced to engineering. Scotty stopped him as he started into the reactor room.
No! The radiation is too strong. It will kill anyone who goes in there.
Pushing Scotty aside, Spock rushed into the deadly room and began the necessary repairs. Kirk couldn't take his eyes away from the burning Reliant.
We aren't going to make it. Status report, Mr. Chekhov.
Admiral, main energy just came back online.
Bless you. Go, Mr. Sulu.
The Enterprise jumped to warp speed just as the Genesis device exploded. With a surge of power, the mighty starship left the explosion far behind. Dr. McCoy called the bridge.
Jim, you'd better get down here. Hurry.
When Kirk arrived in engineering, he found Spock in the reactor room, dying.
Don't grieve, Jim. It's logical. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. I have been, and always will be, your friend. Live long and prosper.
Kirk could only stare helplessly through the glass as his friend fell. The casket containing Spock's body was shot into space. It landed on the new planet created by the explosion of the Genesis device. As the Enterprise pulled away toward home, Kirk gazed back at his friend's resting place. Dr. McCoy turned to him.
You okay, Jim? How do you feel?
Kirk thought about the new planet, bursting with new life and new possibilities. He smiled.
Young. I feel young.